Today, we're talking about a very unique electric locomotive. Only 21 of these were ever built, and only a handful remain in service, but that's about to change. Amtrak retired them after only 15 years because of all their problems, but now, more than a decade later, it looks like they're making a comeback. When you look at it, you might think it kind of looks like the old Acela. Turns out, these locomotives have a lot more to do with the Acela than you might think. The Northeast Corridor is a railway line that runs from Washington, D.C. through major cities like Philadelphia and New York, ultimately ending in Boston. Used by the Acela, the Northeast Regional, long-distance trains, and commuter trains, it features sections that are built to accommodate speeds much higher than most of the United States. It is also famous for being fully electrified, but that part is a much more recent development than you might think. Long before Amtrak, the Northeast Corridor was built by private companies, and it was those companies who electrified the line from Washington to New Haven, Connecticut in the early 20th century. In the 1970s, Amtrak gained ownership of most of the corridor, and by the 1990s, the plan was in action to run America's first high-speed train from Boston to DC. This train would of course be the Acela. But for the Acela to run, the tracks from New Haven to Boston needed to be electric as well. So work on that began in 1996 and it was completed in 2000. Amtrak ordered 20 Acela trains from manufacturers Alstom and Bombardier. But together with the Acela, they also ordered 15 brand new locomotives that were meant to look very similar to the Acelas. Amtrak was looking to retire their old E60 electric locomotives, and the remaining AEM7s would not be enough for full service now that the tracks were electrified all the way to Boston. And so with almost $1 billion from Amtrak, Alstom and Bombardier got to work on the Acela and the HHP-8. HHP-8 stands for High Horsepower 8,000 horsepower. They really want you to know it has a lot of horsepower. It was based on a French locomotive, the BB36000. Over time, these locomotives collected quite a few nicknames. Some people called them bananas because of their shape. Other people called them hippos. Letters HHP kind of look like hippo when you quickly glance at them, I guess, and their shape also sort of resembles motomoto. What I think is cool is that the ancient Greek word for horse is hippos, and so it all kind of circles back to the whole horsepower thing. I'm kind of tired about talking about horses now though. I will, though, be calling these trains hippos from time to time in this video, because it's just more fun to say. Anyway, you'll notice that most of the hippos that I show in this video are not Amtrak locomotives, they are MARC locomotives. MARC, short for Maryland Area Rail Commuter, is a commuter rail service funded by the state of Maryland. MARC has 3 lines. 2 are diesel only, as they don't run on any electrified tracks. But the third line, known as the Penn line, runs on the Northeast Corridor, and so it does see some electric service. I say some because even on the electrified Penn line, all service on weekends and the vast majority of service on weekdays uses diesel locomotives. When you put yourself in the shoes of the agency, it makes sense. Since the other 2 lines are diesel by default, it's useful to have an interchangeable fleet. Plus, Amtrak does charge a lot of money to use the electricity on the Northeast Corridor, but it is always frustrating as a passenger to be at Baltimore Penn Station and to have your thoughts drowned out by one of these screamers. So after I finished the script, MARC announced that they were ordering electric locomotives with battery capability. So that's kind of cool, I guess. Anyway, like I said, there are rare electric runs on the MARC Penn line, and these are carried out using MARC's very own small fleet of HHP-8 locomotives. MARC ordered 6 of these at the same time that Amtrak ordered them. If you want to see or ride the trains with the MARC hippos, your best bet is to go out during weekday rush hours. There are no guarantees of what train will have them, but the last few months I regularly commuted from DC to Baltimore, and I always saw them on train number 413, which leaves Baltimore at 6:45 in the morning and arrives in DC an hour later. Do with that information what you will, just remember that it is always subject to change. Since I have way more footage of the MARC hippos than the Amtrak ones, from time to time when I'm talking about Amtrak, I'll be showing the MARC engines in the B-roll, but I think you'll be okay. The HHP-8s were built between 1999 and 2001, and they entered service on electric train services on the Northeast Corridor. When the Acela was introduced, it was called Acela Express. At the same time, Amtrak began to call their slower locomotive haul trains on the corridor the Acela Regional. Acela Regionals were often pulled by the hippos, so not only do these locomotives look like an Acela, they briefly actually served as an Acela. People found the whole Acela Express versus Acela Regional thing confusing, so in 2003 they renamed the slower trains to just Regional, and then to Northeast Regional in 2008. By then, the writing was on the wall for the hippos, as it became more and more apparent that they would live just a very short service life. The HHP-8 had tons of issues. It got so bad that at one point, sources say they were in the shops an average of once a week. It's hard to find a comprehensive list of all that was wrong with them, but here are some of the main issues. The equipment overheating. Struggling to change power systems. The Northeast Corridor has 3 different electrification systems, and the locomotives would sometimes fail while they were switching between them. Cracks in the trucks. That's bogies for my fellow non-Americans. Software issues. Because of course there were software issues. There really is nothing new under the sun. Speaking of the sun, they only ran well when the weather was nice and dry, which all my friends in the Northeast will be able to tell you this week is not always the case. And finally, the wheels slipped. 8,000 horsepower is a lot of horsepower. It's even more than the Acela, which has 6,000. With that much power, you need some serious weight, and these trains just didn't have that. So if they were accelerated too fast or if the tracks were wet, the wheels would slip. The problems were so bad that when it came time for Amtrak to replace their older AEM-7 locomotives, they decided to order enough new locomotives to replace the AEM-7s and the HHP-8s. That was in 2010. The AEM-7s dated back to 1980, so they were replacing their 30-year-old and their 10-year-old locomotives at the same time. Imagine your office throws you a retirement party after years of service. But when you walk in, you realize the party is for you and for the guy who you supposedly trained to take over your role. Amtrak ordered 70 ACS-64 locomotives from Siemens in 2012, and by 2015, they had retired their very last hippo. Rather than immediately scrap them, they were just pushed to the side and used for parts, presumably for the Acela, given the similarities. This then led to a lawsuit by the owner of the trains. See, when they were ordered, some of the hippos were not bought directly by Amtrak, but by Philip Morris. Yes, the cigarette company. Amtrak then leased them. There is a kind of poetic justice to the fact that the trains owned by the nicotine giant were trash, but Philip Morris was very unhappy that Amtrak was using their now useless property for spare parts, and in 2019, they sued the railroad for almost $93 million. In 2021, the two parties settled. Now, it's been over a decade since Amtrak retired their hippos, but to this day, MARC is still running them. Rather than get rid of them, MARC chose to give their HHP-8s a major overhaul in 2017. They fixed the cooling systems, they fixed the software, and of course, the MARC units never had to change electrification systems. So after the rehab, they were good to go. It is kind of cool to live in one of the only places where you can regularly see these super unique locomotives, although that might change very soon. After years of sitting on the sidelines, Amtrak's hippos are coming back. This time not as locomotives, but as non-powered control units, or NPCUs. This means that the electrical equipment has been removed or disabled, but that the controls in the cab remain intact. The NPCU is put on one end of a train, and it can then control the locomotive on the other end of the train. This means that trains can turn around quickly when they reach the end of the line, because now the locomotive doesn't need to be moved to the other end. This is far from the first time Amtrak has ever done this. The Metroliner cars were once electric multiple units. passenger cars that could move on their own without a locomotive. But due to the equipment's poor reliability, they were converted to unpowered cab cars. They date back to 1969, before Amtrak even existed, and they are still in service today. Later, Amtrak converted some of their diesel locomotives, the F40PHs, into NPCUs as well. They took out the engine and replaced it with baggage space. Now they're called cabbage cars. Cab, baggage, cabbage, get it? The old F40 cabbages can be seen on the Downeaster in Maine, on Midwestern services, in the Pacific Northwest, and in California. Most recently, Amtrak has been converting some of their P42 diesel locomotives into P42Cs, unpowered cab cars. These don't have the baggage space like the older ones, but they have been running on trains from New York to Albany and points beyond. Now about the HHP-8s, or should I say HHP-Cs, as they're being called now. The C stands for cab, and it's kind of a funny name if you think about it. High horsepower cab. But there's no more horsepower, so it's kind of a misnomer. All the more reason to call them hippos. Notice that they have their pantographs removed from the roof. They are purely unpowered, serving just as a way to control a different locomotive. They can no longer pull or push passenger cars on their own. It's a smart move because all the problems of the locomotives were in the electrical and traction equipment. The cabs are fine. This process has been ongoing for several years at this point. I kind of thought they had given it up. After all, we're only a few years away from the new Aero trains entering service, and those all come with a cab and a locomotive already. But just recently, crew certification runs have been taking place from Philadelphia down to DC. Two HHP-Cs, two passenger cars, and a Siemens locomotive make for a very interesting consist. I have to say, I love the repaints in the new Phase 7 livery. Initially, it was thought that these would replace the aging metro liners on the Keystone corridor between New York and Harrisburg. But the most recent rumors that I've heard are that the hippos will instead be used on the Northeast Regional between New York and DC. Some of these shuttle trains currently have an electric locomotive on both ends, so they can turn around faster. But that configuration means that each train is carrying one locomotive that could be used to pull another train. When the hippos are attached to these trains instead, it means that one of the locomotives can be freed up. Metroliners that are currently on services between New Haven and Springfield are likely to be transferred to the Keystone service, and more P42Cs will go up to Connecticut. So that's the story of the Hippo, the Acella's twin brother, but troubled locomotive. For over a decade, the MARC units were the only ones you could see in passenger service, but it looks like the Amtrak ones are finally making a comeback. Hopefully, they'll be a lot more reliable. When that day comes, I'll try to get another video out. For now, that's all I have. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Trains Are Awesome, and we'll see you next time.